Hello and welcome to the 2 Minute Warning, brought to you by the West Side Gazette newspaper here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I am your host, Perry Busby, and I want to introduce my co-host, the publisher for the West Side Gazette, my good friend and brother, Mr. Bobby Henry. Bobby, how you doing, man?
As I like to say, I'm terrific and getting better. I believe if I say it, I begin to believe it, and once I believe it, I begin to feel it. So, Perry Buzzy, I am terrific and getting better, and glad to be here. You know,
All right, all right. And if we're gonna do this, me and you gonna work on Busby.
Busby, man, Perry. Sometimes I like to
Yeah.
get up under your skin and Busby a little bit. We gonna get it right.
That's a good friend now, man. It has been a name that I've seen, boy, but
Hey man,
we gonna
I
work
just
on that one.
we're gonna work on it, brother.
No,
We're gonna work
no,
on it.
no, man. How you doing?
I'm
Good,
good,
good.
Perry, man. Really, man. I truly am. Like I say, and another thing, we're celebrating our 50 years of being in this publishing business, man, and that has truly
Man,
been a
that's great.
blessing. I was going back through some old articles and old archive stuff, and man, just to be able to touch history and feel the life that was in the pages, those 50 years
Man,
ago, really made me want to tear up, man, because of the lives that we have touched and those who have touched our lives. It is truly a unsurmountable task to be assigned to be a recorder of history or a curator of artifacts. All of those
hmm
things, man, are so important. And to guard those things are like guarding, it's more important than guarding a gold mine.
yeah,
People have entrusted in you their lives and their children. And being a part of that, we have cried with families. We have laughed. We have
right,
danced. Throughout the 50 years, man, we've done some stuff that has been absolutely remarkable. But you never know until you have a Sankofa moment where you have to
right,
go back and look. And we
right,
could never ever be at this place had it not been for the people who God has placed in our lives, good, bad, or
right,
indifferent.
right,
Every every mountain we climbed, every valley we bowed down in, every river we crossed, we didn't do it by ourselves. We
right,
had someone right there beside us, and they're still there. And when you look around, those that were right there beside you, they have now gone on to heaven, and they're
right.
looking down on you. People are constantly praying for you, and we don't take this or want to take this lightly. This has
Right.
been a journey of joy, pain, laughter, tears,
Yeah.
just a complete array of what life is. And
Right.
thank God that we've had people in this journey who actually cared for us, who thought enough of my
hmm
daddy's vision and my mother's hard work to be there to see it through. I like to
Yeah.
say, if a mountain was made of glass, nobody could climb it. It's the rough places in the rock where we find this respite for us to
Right.
go on. Now I
Right.
know I'm on my soapbox right about now, but for 50 years, my daddy
I
had
know,
told me,
man. I know.
so I'm
Yeah.
I'm doing this, and before we end this month of February, I'm gonna have my daddy come on, so we can see where
Great.
it all
Great.
came from, you know.
Great.
So, but but
Yeah.
but Perry, man, it's I'm just glad my entire family, everybody, I hate to begin
hmm
to start to call names. So what I like to say is those names have been the thread that bind the pages of our history together, and
right.
keeps us together, and
Right.
we're growing. My sisters,
Yeah.
my daughters, my daughter-in-law, my son, my niece, my nephews, my friends, my brothers. It's a blessing, man. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna spend all the conversation on that. I'm gonna come back
No, but
next month.
I know exactly what you mean because when I first came in, I told them I said, y'all, I'm family.
Mhm.
And I never forget D say, "Now you're gonna have to earn that one." And
you know,
so I'm still earning it, but no, man, it is not only is it great history to learn, and I'm steady learning it. Uh, but it's also a responsibility,
Yeah.
you know, because for it to make it 50 years, that someone had to be responsible.
Mm-hmm.
And and I know trailblazers have it hard. They the first ones out. So
Mm-hmm.
everyone else coming behind them, I mean, so as hard as it get, it's hard when you're the trailblazer. And so we have a great responsibility now in this new part of in 2021.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
50 years. I mean, I know what dad had, but now what do we have? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
now in our hands.
Mm-hmm. You asked that question, Perry, but you've been a part of it.
Yeah.
You've been a part of it. The workings of a machine, the integral parts, the technical parts. We've been blessed to have young folk who are able to not be afraid and venture out and take on a
Hmm.
challenge like this podcast, this 2 minute warning. Your
Right.
your idea, uh, Ariel and Broderick's capabilities.
Hmm.
That's the third generation of the West Side Gazette. You know,
Right.
and we are still believers in our community. Just the fact that this is the gold mine is our
Right.
community, and every person is a jewel. You have to find the right miners, miners, to understand what jewels that they're looking for. It's right there,
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
there. So we
Yeah.
are blessed, man, to be able to do this, and carry it
Right.
on. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't take
Yeah.
it.
Well, no, man, but we had a great show last week,
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
and man, it was It was one of those hard discussions,
Mhm.
but yet, like an onion, you have to peel that next layer away, and it
Mhm.
gets a little harder. And when I think about the West Side Gazette and what it means, I mean, sometimes you have to take a hard issue,
Mhm.
and you have to unfold it to the people, and so just through the years, and that's about building credibility.
Mhm.
And so I look forward to the show that you thought about, or the discussion,
Mhm.
should I say, that you said, hey, let's begin to have that one, because it is a thought-provoking discussion, and I want to say thank you for
Yeah.
this discussion that we're about to have. Only someone like the West Side Gazette
Mm.
could have a discussion like this, so I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. You mentioned last week's program, and this week's program guests um, have been involved, not that situation, but the
Hmm.
protection, of a community, and what Perry, what led us, you and I, to this show, uh, was the incident, where Deputy Clyde Kerr, uh, out of Louisiana, said he'd had enough, and he took his own life. So I got to thinking, man, and we got a lot of brothers, man, who find themselves in situations, being in uniform
Yeah.
and being
Yeah.
in the community, you know.
Tell the people about that. I
Mhm.
don't know if anyone's heard, because I know I didn't hear about it until you told me about it.
Mhm.
Officer
Mhm.
Clyde Kerr.
Yeah, yeah. There's a police officer in Louisiana. Before he took his life, he uh, did a video, and he talked about how he felt about policing and how it was driving him to the point where he couldn't do his job anymore. He said, look, man, I'm not a slacker. I've been at war. I did this and I did that.
Mhm.
He named everything that he some of most everything that he had done that would say to us he wasn't a coward. He was a
Mm-hmm.
man. He was a man that was fed up with a system where he didn't see it changing for the not for him necessarily, but for the people who look like him. You know, he talked
Uh-huh.
about the racism. He talked about Black Lives Matter and police and how they just, were racist. Some of them and wasn't afraid to show it. And he was fed up with it, and he decided to take his life. So I
Mm.
know, I know, and you know, we know police officers, we know brothers, we know sisters, we
Right.
know. And so I said, man, golly, uh, Perry, what can we do? What can we do?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
here we are.
Yeah. No, and I'm looking forward to it because there's also a community on the other side. I mean, and I agree with you. I'm like everyone, but let's introduce our guests,
Mm-hmm.
because I look forward to meeting these brothers.
Yeah.
I'm always
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Well, let me do this. Um, in order to pay homage to the likeness and the tie that binds some of us, I have to pull this out. I got to do this. I got to do this.
all right. Do your
I have
thing.
to pull this out, and I have to make sure that our viewers can see. You're gonna understand the connection here. So I'm doing that. All right. Now let me do this. Okay. First of all, I guess if we went in alphabetical order, it would be Dexter Bailey. We'll bring Dexter on first. Dexter has been in law enforcement for 15 years in Norfolk, Virginia. Um, so let's bring Dexter on there. And where's Dexter? Okay, there he is. What's up, Dex?
How you doing, Mr. Henry? How you doing, Mr. Busby?
Mm-hmm.
Good to see you. Hey, Dexter.
Yeah. Uh, there's a connection, you know, um, with people outside, and I know Dexter from his college days at Norfolk University, where he played on one of the greatest HBCU football teams there in the world.
Okay.
Uh,
Behold a grinning foe.
all right, and that was at Norfolk State, and I met Dex. I met Dex then. Dex had a lot of
Okay.
hair then, but he has always been um, responsible, if you will, even in
Hmm.
college. So Dex, it's a pleasure for you to come on and join us, and I certainly appreciate it.
I appreciate the invite.
Okay, and next we got here. We still going in alphabetical order. This young man here comes from a long line lineage of police officers. From I do believe his great great grandfather in Hazard, Kentucky, believe it or not, was a police officer. And then he has uncles and other relatives who are police officers. And this is another one of my friends, Mr. James Combs, former retired police officer from Dayton, Ohio. I think it was 21 years or 27 years. Yeah.
Yeah, 21 years, 4 years military about that, but yeah, I got the pension going on.
Okay. Okay. Hey, Jimmy, can you speak up a little bit? Is it me?
No,
There you
my,
go. Now. Yeah.
okay.
All
Yeah.
right. Good.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So what's happening, Mr. Combs?
Oh, not a whole lot, Mr. Henry, Mr. Busby. Good evening.
Uh-huh.
Good
Okay.
evening. Good to see you again.
Mhm.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm not sure. Did Mr. Williams make it into the screen yet? Ari, is he backstage? Okay. We have another guest that is supposed to be joining us. I don't know if he made it in. I know he told me he was leaving frat meeting to be on this program, and that's uh, Assistant Chief Anthony Williams. Chief Williams has. Oh, he's there. There he is. Okay, here we go. Yeah.
All
So
right.
uh, Chief Anthony Williams has served in the Fort Lauderdale Police Department, I think, for 21 years in several capacities. He has a plethora of experience. He's retired, so he is I don't think he ever retired. Do you ever retire, Amp?
I'm retired.
You retired. Okay. All right. But this is Chief Anthony Williams. So we all are here. Everybody's here. Good.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well, I guess I ought to feel. I should feel protected. I'm surrounded by all these dogs. I guess I ought to feel real good.
man's best friend.
All right,
So
I'm
you're
among
right.
good brothers.
All right. Good. As we were saying, we were talking about how it must be being a police officer must have been full of joys and pains, understanding your role in the community in which you served. Let's start with you, Amp. When did you decide to become a police officer, and what was it that allowed you to do that?
Bobby, to be honest, I just got out of the military
Mm-hmm.
and I was looking for a job.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I had did 6 years in the Army, and it was kind of a natural progression for me to lean towards law enforcement because of the similar training.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, that's what I did. I understood that it had benefits, and I just started putting in applications, and I got lucky and landed in Fort Lauderdale.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go around the table with the same question. Dex?
Yeah, so for me, I got in law enforcement maybe a year after I graduated college. My ultimate goal was to, get into federal law enforcement, FBI. My best friend, his aunt, she was a higher up with the FBI, and so I had conversations with her. She kind of inspired me. Well, my degree was in sociology at the time. They were taking people with different backgrounds than what I had. So I figured my best bet to get into the FBI was to join local law enforcement to gain some experience. So that's how I got in. Been doing it for 13 years.
Okay. Mr. Combs?
Well, mine was twofold. One you've already mentioned, family. Grandfather was deputy sheriff of Hazard, Kentucky. I had an uncle who was a Dayton police officer, detective actually. My sister and first cousins were Dayton police officers, and then there was extended family that were FBI, Texas State Trooper, and I had a first cousin in Indiana that was a homicide detective. So it kind of just fell in line. My family is either the bigger ones was either education or law enforcement. So I followed the law enforcement.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I guess we should just jump right on into this then. In being a police officer, let's just make sure that everybody served at some time in the hood, if we would.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Not to name the incident, if any, when did you find yourself almost wanting to cry, or even to cry?
Well, that's an easy one for me, Bobby.
Mm-hmm.
You may recall the incident of the little girl at Dillard High School walking home from school with supposedly a friend. The little girl was the 8th grader going into the 9th grade. Star basketball player was, I don't know if you recall that story, happened right there on 27th Avenue on the corner of 11th Street. Well, long story short, my partner and I responded to that call. We were the first on the scene. And to get there and see that little girl fighting for her life, she was fighting. That one affected me the most in my career. That based on the fact that I couldn't do anything to save her. She had been shot by the kid that was walking with her, and she died right on that sidewalk. That one hurt me the most.
Mm-hmm.
Bobby, I'd have to say the times, and I can't even begin to count. But I've seen these babies, the shaken baby syndrome of these babies' daddies who have taking child, the toddler, and basically shaking them, and their brains, just turning to the mush, and them passing away right there.
Yep. For me, similar, Mr. Combs, seeing babies, that's always a tearjerker for you. But also seeing, people losing loved ones, gunshot victims, people in the hood, it happens every day. So seeing, families trying to grieve immediately once they see, their loved ones just becoming victims of being a gunshot victim.
And every day, being in the battle zone like this, and the enemy or the atmosphere looks like you, you know, you know. I had a friend of mine when I lived in another place. We used to get together on Friday evenings, but before we would go to relax ourselves, that person had to leave their equipment, their job equipment, upstairs. Couldn't bring it down, you know. Um, but that person was trying to find relief. So how how do you separate? How do you separate seeing the victim that looks like you involved in shootings from people who look like them, being shaken to death by people that look like them? How do you do your job without that affecting you?
Well, I think, if I may, I think for me, main thing, once it's done, I guess over years I've been able to compartmentalize things. Once it's done, I leave work at work, and come home and try to enjoy my family. Can't bring work at home because then it's gonna stress your family life out. And then the other part to it is I found different ways to give back. So you see so much taken from the community on your 8-12 hour shift. You got to find a way to give back. And so I've been able to do that through, our fraternity, different nonprofit organizations, just to be able to give back. So just to build it back up with what you see being tore down every day.
And Bobby, I think, when you think about when you and I met up in Dayton, Ohio, and what I was doing, and I'll say that community-based policing was a great thing for me. It allowed me to interface with the community a lot more, with the priority board, with the Cub Scouts, with churches and community organizations, and actually become a real person right there within the community, despite all of the things that I had to deal with while on duty. And again, like Dex, the fraternity was an outlet, and my family was an outlet.
Well, I'll say that it does affect you. You may not realize it, but in the long run, absolutely it affects you. But like both the gentlemen just alluded to, you have to find ways to compartmentalize it and to have outlets. You got to have outlets. You can't keep it all to yourself. As a profession, you are told that you're going to change. From the start point, you tell you that you're going to change. Your friends are going to change. Your outlook's going to change. Your associations are going to change. And that was all true. So over the years, it does affect you. But I think it's important for leaders, whether sheriffs or chiefs, to have things in place to assist the officers with the outlet. It's good to have gyms and good to have those nights where your squad goes out and enjoy one another. And absolutely, family time and exercise is a key factor.
Okay, we got We got a viewer, John Shaft. John says, does the community treat you any different based on you being a black officer, or are you treated with discord for wearing the uniform?
I would say both. It depends on who you are dealing with. I remember as a rookie getting out on the street and we chased a stolen car. And it was a black male driving it, and he bailed out of the car, and the car went one way, and he went running another. And I took off after him, and I went through some woods. I was able to catch him and bring him back. Of course, the community that was had assembled at that time, I got all the name calling, the Uncle Tom, and look at this N word. Look how he just grabbed one of us. I guess he's happy. That type of thing. But I've always treated people like I wanted to be treated if I was in that same situation. I treated that brother, and I've treated everyone that I've arrested with dignity and respect. Now I'll say this, AH, you know what an AH is, is going to be treated like an AH.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Jimmy, on this show, you're allowed to say asshole if you want.
Right, yeah.
It's okay. It's okay.
But I've always treated everyone, with respect and with dignity, and it's been my kind of the way I've done things, and of course interfacing with the community before, during, and after work has been a great help.
Mm-hmm.
But as the chief was alluding to, I mean, police officers, whether they realize it or not, do go through bouts of PTSD. It is a battlefield out there. You have to be conscious of what's going on, and what has been one of the things that has been distasteful amongst departments across this country is the help that was available. It used to be, and we were very suspicious of the fact if we were feeling a certain way or something had occurred where it was bothering us, to go see the department shrink. Now, we recognize in a lot of cases, especially in my earlier years, that department shrink, whatever he might have found, he might have, reported to command staff and or HR for the city or the county, and that could lead to your demise in terms of your career. But at least I think a lot of departments around the country now are kind of subletting that out, where it's confidential what is discussed with that officer and that department shrink, or that shrink that is chosen when that officer truly needs mental health.
Mm-hmm. 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 You said something. A couple of things. You said the PSD. Now, yeah, there's a post, but it appears too that there is a perpetual syndrome, if you will, PSD syndrome. That from that post, and that you also said about seeing a shrink. Now, studies have shown that there is a difference when it comes to psychological evaluating from a white standpoint versus a black standpoint. So you could set yourself up by going to see a shrink when you really need to. I don't want to. Perry, jump in here, man, because I don't want to take over this conversation. There's a lot of stuff. You was getting
no. I hear what you're saying, because and if we can just be just some real brothers, because sometimes I think when we get together, we're no different than anybody else. We use code words, and Dex said a code word that I know I used quite a bit, and we all talk about compartmentalizing. And I think to some degree, compartmentalizing is an illusion. It's a coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
We think we putting it to the side, but we just learning how to live with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I want to ask. How do you brothers deal with it? Because that shit on the street is coming faster and faster.
Mm-hmm.
and you can't just put that away. So how do you deal with that in that battle zone?
Yeah.
Because how can you help some of these young brothers that's out here now? Because they dealing with some stuff, and I'm like, well, who can help these brothers out here?
Mm-hmm.
You mean as
Yeah.
far as the situations they're facing in the streets?
Yeah, and then having to deal with it and get back out there the next day and act in a professional manner as if nothing has happened. Something may have happened even at headquarters if you black. And you getting out here and you gonna get into a stressful situation. Yeah, I know we all want to act professional, but if your life being jacked up, you ain't always acting professional. I'm not a peace officer. And I know if shit going on wrong with me, it's gonna be hard sometimes if you just bump me the wrong way. So how we gonna be brothers in the hood, protected, and still having to deal with that? And I know that that's part of it. How do we deal with that? Because that's the reality of this.
Well, a lot of
And I
prayer,
know all of y'all are good brothers.
a lot of prayer, but hopefully some of the things you said, hopefully training will cover most of that. Usually when you're in a heated situation, stressful situation, you revert back to your training. Train, and officers understand that. So if they're in a heated situation, what they've been accustomed to when they weren't stressed in training, that kicks in automatically in most cases.
Right. Okay, and I know training is like parenting, because if your child act bad, that ain't really a idea about bad parenting. But I'm just saying, is it bad training? Because it's happening too much.
What's happening?
I mean these incidents. I mean, and I know we're putting policemen into incidents in which they aren't sometimes equipped. I mean, we got this incident just happened. This guy's family. We talked last week with a family. A guy is bipolar.
Kevin Desir.
Situation gets out of hand. Yeah, Kevin Desir family.
Perry, I'll say this, and it goes in line with what the chief said. It is training. But I think what
Yeah.
we're experiencing around this country with departments is lack of training.
Yeah.
And I think that
Mm-hmm.
due to attrition where we've got older officers retiring and departments have to hurry up and get some more guys out there, some more ladies out there in uniform, corners are being cut. And we're seeing the results of those corners being cut and the lack of training that these young people have. And then they're faced with situations that are overwhelming and they get internalized and they're not dealt with. And we see the results of that. And it boils down to fear. There was 5 levels of fear. I was an academy instructor. And we talked about the levels of fear. And you never want to get into that highest level, which is in the black. And even if you're in the red or the orange, where they're a little bit lower, but you're still, that fight or flight syndrome is coming over you. As the chief said, you revert back to your training. You know exactly what to do, and it comes from repetition and thought process and evaluation, and for you to be able to handle those things, and you have. But if you lack the training, then not only are you at risk, the department's at risk, that city or that a municipality is at risk. And departments have been sued for that.
We got another question from one of our viewers. As a matter of fact, this particular viewer happens to be a reverend, and the reverend asked, I am delighted to join in this Omega meeting. You guys represent 3 different communities. How has the church played a role in what you guys do? And this guy the reverend happened to be a brother. So he's asking, how has the church played a role in what you guys do?
Let me say this first, Bobby.
Yeah.
I recognize that this is a different generation we're dealing with on the streets. Back when I was a kid, if the church pastor walked up, he got mad respect. And whatever he said, that's what it was. These generation of kids, they don't have that respect for the church preacher. They just don't. They weren't raised like that. So we got to find a different way to use them. First of all, they have to recognize that. And then we as a community have to find a different way to use them to get to the young people in the community. So I think that's, when we talk about it as adults in our age group, we think back to how we respected the church and the pastor. But this third generation, they don't hear that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, and again, we just gonna be real. What did they say? They say respect is earned.
Mm-hmm.
And so we say we didn't give respect; they earned our respect. So we have to look at our generation. I say all the times, you know, it's easy to judge apples, but apples come from trees. So, you know, so have we raised a generation that don't know how to respect? I mean, you know, and that becomes a much deeper issue in our communities. And that's just the nature of our communities. I mean, it's in the war zone.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's get back to what Reverend Williams asked. He asked, but you said you said this earlier. Maybe the Reverend will know when you said how you have to pray. So, situation. Has there been a situation when you say, "Oh God, this is it"? Anybody? Y'all some good cops. We got the wrong cops in here, man. We should have some dirty ass cops.
Man, right. We need some dirty cops.
These are good police officers, man. Because I know them. I don't mess with the dirty cops. These are good police officers.
Right.
Has there been a time when you said, "Oh God, you know, this is it"? You know?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's situations that happen often, but I think you get so used to it, and that it again go back to the word compartmentalize. Your training kicks in, so your body reacts to these stressful situations, and it's going to go back to muscle memory, and it goes back like Mr. Combs said. You're training. You're going to go to what you know. Basically, it's just like being on a football field. You know, you go to your technique. Same principle. So those situations where you are in those life or death situations, your body reacts to, you know, a certain way, and you're able to, you know, just revert to your training and handle it, you know, how you see fit. But definitely, and to go back to the pastor, his question, yes, you gotta, you know, lean on God, stay in the word, you know, have people to talk to.
Mm-hmm. You know, so what you guys are saying, when the case comes up and it's totally different, you have those police officers who in 3 seconds shot Tamir Rice to death. You have those police officers who supposedly have had training put their knee on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. You have those police officers who are trained to note the color code, if you would, orange, red, up to black. When you're in that zone, that ass pucker factor. When you get to that point, you know, you choke a man out. What is it that separates you from that? So that's, and I think that's what the young brothers in the hood see, or what they are confronted with. Not the proper training, but just those who revert back to what they know.
Those incidents that you just identified, that had nothing to do with training. In my opinion, those acts, they wanted to be committed for whatever reason. There's nothing in police work that says you drive up on a kid or an adult that you think has a gun. There's nothing in police work where you drive up to 2 feet in front of this kid and just open up shooting. You don't even approach that situation that way.
Right.
So that's not training. Neither one of those situations that you just identified, that's not a training issue.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. I think what is lacking is empathy. You got to be empathetic. Yeah, I know for me, you know, I got the mindset, like when I come in contact with people, it could be the worst day of their life, you know, going to these domestic calls. You know, folks are going through a legit crisis at the time. So you got to empathize, you got to take your time and listen. A lot of people just want to be heard. And that's what, you know, officers got to do.
Yeah.
And that's what the community got to do, you know,
Yeah.
to the officers. Because there are going to be times where you're going back and forth and talking, but you just got to listen. Listen with a sound mind and an open heart.
Yeah. I know usually when an officer is killed on duty, the media has a way of showing the officers coming together. But we never see that sort of coming together, or it's assumed another kind of coming together when an officer kills someone in our you know, someone in the hood. They come together in a more of a buffer. But my question is, how does that truly affect officers, or does it affect the office when an officer shoots someone like that in that case, like a Tamir Rice? How does that affect the unit, or does it?
I would say it absolutely does. You know, I'm not here to defend anybody, but I will say this: I had a lot of good police officers work for me. A lot of good police officers. Most of them go out there and do it right every day. When you see a situation like what happened with your rights, that hurts. It hurts. It hurts the whole department. Hurts the morale, everything. So don't be misled to think that everybody's walking around there laughing about a situation like that. That is not the case.
I would
No,
even.
I don't agree. I agree. I don't think that's the case. But go ahead, Dexter. I'm sorry.
I was going to say that that's not only within that department, that extends throughout the nation. And if an incident happens in one out in California, it affects us in Dayton, Ohio. And or down in Florida, it affects us up in Dayton. So it's not just in that department; it's throughout.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was okay. We got there's another question. How, and it comes from Mo Speaks. What's up, Mo? How has the panel guests or their respective police departments incorporated building police and community partnerships?
So I think it varies from police department to police department. Ms. Combs said it earlier, community policing. I know a while back that was a big thing. Now they're bringing it back. At least in the late 2000s, early 2010, it's a concentrated effort to get guys out to actually know the community. I know my past department, we have community resource officers, and so their job is specifically to know the people in their community. So in these projects in the hoods, neighborhoods, like these guys go out, they know the residents, and I think that's how you build the partnership, by getting to know each other.
Bobby, that was my whole career.
Yeah.
Community policing. That was my baby. I loved it. I grew up in the department with it, and I strongly believe in it. And it works. It works. You develop friendships, you develop partnership with businesses, and it makes your job easier as a department.
So, it's the best thing since sliced bread. And I just like to give a shout out to Brother Speeches. I used to work for him. He's a Dayton officer, retired. So he knows very well how community policing and partnerships are just crucial to relationships.
If I'm gonna jump in here and say something, I remember, and I'm not bragging at all, but Dayton, Ohio had one of the best, aside from here, the city of Fort Lauderdale, when it comes to community policing. But Dayton, the city of Dayton Police Department, had a relationship with the Boy Scouts because people who cared in that community got them involved. So it was a relationship that was built outside of that uniform. And when the police officers involved would put on their uniform, the respect that was earned in that organizational structure and the things they did, camping, cooking, conversation, soapbox derby, all of that stuff in a boy's life allowed them to be able to go into different communities, the dangerous ass communities, and able to talk to people. So that works. That community-based policing works. And yes, Chief Williams, your officers did. They could go into a crowd and if need be, come here, boy. If need be, because the relationship was there. We don't see that relationship. Those in charge that look like us, for some reason, when they put on the uniform, not y'all, but when they put on the uniform, it seems to create a separation. And so how do we get to that point? How do we get to the point of putting on a uniform and let it define who you are?
Well, it's kind of one of those questions: does the uniform make you, or do you make the uniform?
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, you making the uniform.
Right.
So it's a mindset. You going out there every day to do something positive in the community.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. I got another viewer says, of all the training that you receive, what is the one or two subjects that you were not trained on and wish you had training and or went out of your own and educated yourself on it? That comes from Q Snyder, another bro.
I would say probably mental health issues. One of the things that I can see right now, a lot of departments lack is their training and dealing with individuals that have mental health problems, especially past military individuals with mental health issues, because that fear factor overwhelms. Knowing that you're dealing with someone with a mental health
What do you ask for?
who has training, just as much training as you do.
Mm-hmm.
Could be armed, could be agitated, but the lack of knowledge of how to approach that is something that I've always tried to take that extra step to learn.
Mm-hmm.
I have to agree with that. Although we do receive minimal training, and they call it CIT training now.
Mm-hmm.
You have this buzzword going around the country now talking about defunding the police. Well, I disagree with that, but I do agree with rearranging some of the assets to include mental health people that work directly with and or for the police agencies that can respond and maybe diffuse some of these confrontational engagement. So when we talk about defund, I don't say take money away. I say reallocate it. Be smarter about what we do with it. We certainly can't take money away. We need all the resources we can get. Just add to your arsenal of resources.
Yeah.
Okay, and it just so happened that Chief, one of the viewers, Mr. Ken Timmons, asked the question. First, he said, "Thank you, gentlemen, for your contribution to our community. Clarify for me what is meant by defunding the police. I understand it to mean the reapportment, and you just covered this budget to perhaps factor in social, mental health. You see how now you see how we're engaging in this conversation, right? And so there's a need for us to expound on certain things, and God is making a way for this to happen. And you were just talking about this, and this brother said this in here. So, but there's another question that came. Okay, Benjamin Bradley says, would you stop an officer doing something wrong during an arrest?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes. No question about it.
Yes.
And what a lot of people don't understand is there's a law that says the officer must intervene when they see another officer breaking the law.
That didn't work.
It I didn't say it worked. I'm telling you it's wrong.
And that's something that's needed information. You know, another viewer asked. He said, "Ask about mental health diagnosis and cops losing badges because they're not fit for duty. So they lie about their mental state. How do we assess the mental health of officers to ensure they are healthy to police the community?"
So there's a screening process that takes place during the hiring process where, and again, we're talking about a department or just say a HR hired psychologist that has
And
that.
9 times out of 10, they ain't black.
Excuse me?
9 times out of 10, they ain't black.
You are correct.
I'm sorry, go Jim.
But that's where the initial screening takes place. Then, of course, if there are incidents that have drawn attention to this officer in terms of behavior and conduct, they may decide to send him or her to see a departmental shrink again. However, you know, that's not concrete.
Mm-hmm.
But the department can say I did something.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm glad we're engaging in conversation. Cody Fleming asked, as black men in law enforcement, how do you hold your fellow law enforcement brothers and sisters accountable when they are acting disorderly or being overly aggressive when dealing with citizens in underserved communities?
I'll answer that one because that's actually Mr. Fleming is a brother, LG Spring 04.
Mm-hmm.
The same way you interact with community, trying to de-escalate a situation. You got to use those same tactics on officers if they're going overboard. You see something, you got to say something. If you see a problem and you don't do anything, you become part of the problem. So I know for us, like we would have these conversations, especially going back to the George Floyd incident, the Samir Rice. Back in our squad amongst ourselves, we would have these conversations, and oftentimes I'm one of the few people that look like me. So it's really those back conversations, those conversations after work when you're hanging out, just to show them that people of color are people too. So yeah, you just got to be able to show other officers that don't look like us that we're human too.
Okay.
And Bobby, in the heat of the moment, right then and right there, you got to step up. You got to tell that officer, that back down and go sit back in the car and let you talk to him, step off to the side, because you don't want that situation to become elevated, to get out of hand. There's been plenty of times where I've had an officer either go back to the car or step off to the side to cool down, cool off, collect themselves, while I talk to either the complainant or someone that was that called the police, instead of allowing them to escalate the situation.
Okay.
That needs to happen more across the country. It really does, and it starts at the top. The leadership, they need to push that. That needs to be standard operating procedures. That needs to be drilled into officers every day. You see something, you say something.
And if that means dealing with that officer right then and there, then that's what you do.
Yeah.
And then you have that conversation afterwards. But right then and there, where you see that officer raising the hairs on the back of someone's neck unnecessarily, you have them step off.
Yeah. And speaking of that, we all talk about communicating with the neighborhood. And unfortunately, a lot of times the communication happens in the midst of chaos. But just what are some better mechanisms, maybe some that we had in the past or some that just need to be implemented? Because I mean, we're dealing with a new dynamic and kids are different and the way they gather different. So how do we go about communicating with these new neighborhoods, and what are some of the ways that you think that we need to go back to?
One thing I really liked about what my department was doing at one point in time was having citizen academy. You know, not everyone's going to attend, but at least if some of the elders within the community or folks that were out in leadership positions attended and understood what the police did and what they had to do, especially in emergency situations, because you're not always able to explain to someone why they need to, stand over here or kind of go, vacate the area or whatever. But police have the responsibility when it comes to protecting. You don't have always time to explain to people what's going on. You know, it could be a situation where their lives are in danger, and sitting there giving them a dissertation explanation. You don't have time for that. And that's something that the Citizens Academy was able to kind of relay through education to the citizens in the city of Dayton. I hope that's still going on.
Okay. I'm sitting here, I'm reading something, this article, the Los Angeles School Board slashes its police force and diverts $25 million to service for Black students. Now, you're talking about defunding the police. Would that be considered defunding the police or increasing hope for communities?
That's exactly right, Bob. It depends on what those programs are. You're absolutely right. I like your thought process. You're right on the money. It could be something that in the future creates a community that you don't need as many kids. I think that might be the thought process. So is that taken away, or is that being smarter about what you do with the funds? We'd have to see exactly where they're allocating those funds.
Okay. Let me ask you all this. Recently, of course, the attack, the insurrection, not whatever you want to call it, those people acting a damn fool. In that process, the fallout, and God, I pray for the families that people died. But you had two Capitol police officers allegedly to commit suicide. And understanding in the DC law, if a police officer commits suicide, then they don't get the pension or the money needed. So you got two families. You have two families whose husbands gave their life to protect, but now you risk the chance of these families not having any care. What's your feeling on that? I mean, I'm sorry, the attorney came back and said that the one police officer, he died from blunt trauma. What do you call it?
Blunt trauma.
Thank you, to the head, and that's what caused him to go over the edge. So what's your thoughts on, in the line of duty, like occur, you take your life?
Well, I think there needs to be some reevaluation of what leads to these incidents, so that there can be special situations where that spouse or that family does get that officer's pension and are being taken care of. Because we do have cities and situations where there are war zones, literally, that officers are going out into, or at least similar to them, with the things that they deal with every day. Just one of those changes that needs to happen.
Yeah.
If they weren't involved in any illegal activity, if there was, no reason to, just discount that person. I mean, and it was a result of paying the cost of policing, then I think there needs to be a reevaluation.
Yeah, I think if they can link that stress that causes them to take their own lives to, directly to the job, then their family should receive that benefit, because without the job, more than likely they wouldn't have took their lives. So
There's a question that comes from Fort Lauderdale branch president of the NAACP, Sister Marcia Ellison. Marcia asked the question, Madam President asked the question, the school to prison pipeline is real. There are too many Black children arrested at schools all over the country. Not every cop belongs in our school. Agree, disagree, what's your comments?
I agree that that not every police officer should be in these schools because, unfortunately, many departments use those positions as punishment functions. So that officer probably screwed up somewhere else and has a bad disposition or problem, and so you're going to stick him in a school around kids that are going to just aggravate them and or take them over the edge and have them react violently or toward these kids without training. Um, and I'll say this, Bobby, I worked in school. I was a career tech teacher trying to get high schoolers to take a look at criminal justice as a career. We had a connection with St. Clair Community College for them to continue and possibly get scholarships to get into an academy and become police officers. But looking at some of these school resource officers around the country, they don't belong there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but does that also give off an idea that they're living in a over policed environment? I mean, you know, if you're in the suburbs, you're not dealing with it, and so not only does not every officer, I mean, but does every school? I mean, how do we deal with that?
Well, let me say this. I think he's absolutely right. Every officer does not belong in schools. The right officers need to be in the schools. And we didn't use it as punishment. It should be the good officers. It should be a reward for the good officers with the right disposition to be in schools. But I also want to put some responsibility on the schools and the administrators. My thought process is make the school staff do their jobs first.
Right.
Police officers should not be called to engage in school activity. Little kids fight. Look, Johnny fight. That's what they do. In school security, they're trained in ways to break up things. To engage a police officer in something that should be handled administratively is a problem, and I've always had that problem. I don't like it. I think principals, assistant principals, and security staff should be engaged first. They have a job to do. Don't call the police officers because see, a police officer don't have but one answer. That's it. I'm talking about the long-term answer is to eventually arrest.
Yeah. Yeah. Ask that 9-year-old girl who they.
If one of those kids within the struggle messes around and hits the officer with an elbow, now she's facing a felony charge. That's crazy. That's crazy. Why not call in the school staff and let the administrators do their job? Don't involve the police first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Benjamin Bradley says, here in Georgia, there are problems with white supremacy groups. How are you dealing with this? He specifically mentioned Lauderdale, but we got Dayton and Virginia here. Have any of you had to deal with this, and how did you handle the situation?
I've been to, during my time in the Dayton Police Department, been to 3 Klan rallies. And as distasteful as it may have been to me to be protecting their First Amendment rights, I had to do my job.
Mm.
But I would say that at least we communicated with the community as much as we could to let them know how unimportant the Ku Klux Klan was, that regardless of the fact that we did have to do our job to protect their First Amendment rights, that we were also concerned with the health and safety of the community, those that, and trying to get them to not engage. Yeah, I've dealt with that about 3 times.
What about you, Dex? Been up there in the good old Virginia?
So um, they are alive and well.
Mhm.
I've actually been a part of several investigations. Some have made the news recently where people have been involved in these supremacy groups and organizing and planning attacks. And I mean, you have to investigate them. Same way you investigate, a domestic case or a drug case or whatever. Um, you have to do your due diligence and do what you can to put these people, um, when they commit these crimes, in jail.
Mhm.
So I think the community, our community, you need to be alert, realize that, white supremacy isn't done, but and then, work with our allies to break these, supremacy groups up.
Okay, Perry, you had a conversation. You and I talked about perhaps one of our shows being to alert us or to educate us on what the possibilities are for supremacist groups. I don't remember, and I'm not citing anybody, but I don't remember. And this is not from saying anything negative about Fort Lauderdale Police Department or Broward County Sheriff Department, but I don't remember ever having a session, a town hall, or any community forum to discuss um, white supremacist group or the possibility of um, groups, with some subversive tendencies ever to be brought to our community.
We have had some. We, as my brother said, we've had to protect their rights to assemble as well. But I want to say this: Broward County, Fort Lauderdale, and the FBI and all the other different agencies around in Broward County, they're very, very well versed in what these groups are doing. You'd be amazed at the information and the monitoring that's going on in that county. You may not say it, but believe me, the monitoring capabilities are extremely good.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's reassuring. Uh, Q Snyder says, you each said you would stop a bad cop. Omega men are not concerned with peer pressure. Why is the blue why is the blue fraternity so strong that many cops will not cross the blue code and thus we get 8 minutes 46 seconds?
It's the culture. It's the culture. The culture says you do not tell on cops. That's the historic culture. And if you do, you can be uh, you can be abolished for it, right? You can be shunned. You can be ostracized. So it's not popular. It's not. And a lot of cops have to make that choice. It's the individual at that time. It's the individual who make that call. Uh, when I know officers that have done it, and I've done it, and all of a sudden you start being treated differently. All of a sudden you may not get that promotion or that assignment you were looking for. So that stuff happens, but it's individual choice and your relationship with God.
That's true. That's true. And it is a strong culture that you are indoctrinated into from day one. But you have to be able to be strong enough to, make sure that you're on the right path and that those things going on around you that you're not that you can separate yourself from.
Yeah, I think you got to be able to make that decision, so that you know whether or not you can live with yourself at night, right? So you got to understand that you are a police officer for 8 to 12 hours a day. You take that uniform off at some time, and just as a suspect could be treated, you can be pulled over and treated the same way. So you got to realize that you have to, when you have that opportunity, you got to correct, these guys in these situations.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Have you guys ever had run-ins as citizens?
As citizens,
Yeah, as citizens.
I've been pulled over multiple times. Yeah.
Yeah. Has it gone okay? I mean, just from a
I'm here.
professional.
I'm
Right,
here.
right. I understand that. But, I mean,
Yeah, no,
what is the defuse? I mean, or have you ever been to a point where you had to try to defuse it?
honestly, I haven't been in a situation that got to that level. Me as a citizen being pulled over, but I have been pulled over, and at the appropriate time. Because for me specifically, and I mean, and other people can use this as well. There's not many times where I travel unarmed. So how I handle these situations when I get pulled over, hands on the wheel, where they can see me. If it's dark, turn my light on where they can see anything. So there's no excuse. They're not going to get anything, confused. And at the appropriate time, when I could tell that they're listening, I let them know, hey, I have a firearm on me. And so just don't make any sudden movements, because you never know what they're thinking.
Yeah.
And it goes both ways. So
Yeah.
just open, clear lines of communication. Try not to argue. And just speak. Talk to people and talk to them the way you want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. We are.
Situation with being pulled over. I mean, earlier on in my career, there was a lot of so-called professional courtesy being done. Officers that I know of being intoxicated, DUI, those type of things, and being given a ride home, and car being left there, and them not being charged. But that changed. That culture changed, and officers were beginning to be held responsible. So again, as Brother Dex said, cooperation and understanding that officers are on duty and they're not uniform, got to do his job.
Yeah.
My thing is not making it any harder for him.
Yeah. Well, I have another question on that. Um, if you get pulled over, and let's just say, I mean, it's just someone harassing. How does that even get reported, or how can you even begin to report that, especially if there's nothing? And here's where I go with that. Back in the day, way back in the day, I used to wear dreads, and I lived in Third Ward in Houston. I didn't live on McGregor. I lived in what they called the bottom. And every day as I drove into that neighborhood, I mean, I would get stopped on the regular. So much so that, yeah, several of those times I ended up either with tickets and on two occasions ended up in jail. How can citizens help gather something like that to prevent that? I mean, because I knew it was harassment. I mean, I'm getting stopped maybe every other week because I'm driving into my neighborhood home when it's dark. I got a suit, I got dreads on, but that just looks suspicious.
So that comes, every department across America has an internal affairs division. Those situations need to be complaints need to be sent up to them. We often talk about, where were officers with these bad apples, but it's the citizen's job, who's more than likely going to see these one-on-one encounters, to report it. And these internal affairs divisions, they investigate these things. Whether something happens or not, who knows? It's not for me to determine. But if you're constantly getting harassed by officer, you need to report it.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I'm just saying because as a citizen, your first thing is I want to get home, and then you home and you never report it. Then all of a sudden here you're on this cycle. Now you got tickets. Once you got tickets, you're in another part of the justice now. And if you didn't pay the ticket, now you're in jail. So I mean, hell, you done lost all concept of the fact that you've been getting pulled over. And so I'm just saying, how do we, what are some of the ways that I think we can try to help citizens understand that if you you
Let
know.
me say this. First of all, stay calm. Do not get into an argument with the police
Mhm.
officer.
Right.
Your goal is to get out of that situation. That's your goal.
Alive.
That's your
Right.
ultimate goal.
Right.
Keeping in mind that that's also the officer's goal.
Mm-hmm.
They want to go home to their families too. So don't agitate it. Don't sit there and argue the situation or whatever. You cannot win on the street. You can't win on the street. And don't be cursing and yelling, talking about you gonna report it. That's fine. Don't do all that.
Yeah.
You're gonna report them. You need to be as accurate as possible about who the officer was, whether it be badge number, name, vehicle number, all that. Any witnesses after the officer leaves, you need to try to get some of those witnesses. Hopefully, some of them will be brave enough to give a statement later on. And then you need to report it. You got to see it through. You got to see that reporting.
Mm-hmm.
You got to see that through. Because often what happens is we get these complaints on what the citizen says is a bad officer. We go pull his internal affairs file, and he doesn't have any complaints. So what's the administration's ammunition against the officer? On paper, he's a stellar officer. Never had a complaint. Because the citizen needs to do their part in following up. And if they have done that and they have 20 or so complaints, then it's on the administration of that agency to take action. But you got to give them something to work with. But the key is not to try to settle the dispute on the street. You can't win that fight.
Oh no, no.
Okay. Brothers, it's been real. It's been fun. One of the viewers, John Shaft, as we were talking about the blue code of conduct, and I wanted to interject a little humor. When he said, when Q Snyder said blue code, I thought he was talking about the sickness. But he was, but then John Shaft John Shaft made a statement. He said, in the hood they say, snitches get stitches. So that kind of goes along with what in a way that blue code of conduct, I guess. So that's that. As we get ready to wrap this up, I know we missed a lot, and there's a lot that could have been said. But if each one of you would take a minute to offer what would be your building block in laying a foundation for a better relationship between the police departments and the hood.
Transparency. Being honest, open, upfront. When we make a mistake, own it, do the right thing. And I think if you develop a pattern doing that, they'll know it's just not lip service. And you'll see some traction in that area.
I'd have to agree. I think that just being forthright and forward about your actions and truthful with individuals and being willing to get involved beyond the duties of that you have on the department.
It's almost noble. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. That transparency is key. Especially in light of some of these recent incidents across the country, people want to see what's going on, and you can't, when these mistakes happen or bad decisions happen, you can't, try to sweep it in the rug. You got to get out in front of it and release the information that you can, that if it doesn't hamper your investigation. And then my thing is empathy. You got to be able to empathize, with people. As I said before, earlier in the show, officers are probably dealing with somebody who's in crisis. Probably the worst thing ever happened to them in their life, and we're coming to them, some more times than not, taking their freedom. And so you got to be able to empathize with people.
Okay, Mr. Busby.
No, first of all, thank all of you guys for your service to our communities and for all your sacrifice. I mean, that's a profession I've never considered, and but I've always looked up to those who have. Um, I our communities need protection, and they need men like you to protect it. And it's unfortunate that our communities are caught in this tug of war. They know they need police, but they hate the hell out of police. It's fuck the police. And so just how do we communicate that? Because it's okay to have criticism. It's okay to have that. But how do we advance it? Because our communities are not being the better for it. And so, I just hope that we learn, especially with this new generation, to really try to learn how to listen to them. And so much is coming at them, and unfortunately, you guys see it when it's at its worst. And so, it's going to take all of us. And I really appreciate Bobby for introducing you guys, because we need to see the humanity behind the people who protect us. And as I told Bobby, you guys, I call you guys the wounded warriors, because every day out there, good or bad, you got to get out there and be the warrior. And some days you wounded, and that's just the reality of it, And so, to give you guys a chance to speak, I know for me, I just want to say even more. Thank you for sharing.
Okay.
Bob, you hit on something I think is important that you communicate as well through your show. People need to apply to be police officers and FBI agents. People from the black community apply. We need more.
Bobby, kind of piggyback on what Keith just said. Now, I was an adjunct professor at Central State University and taught several classes there, police and society, investigations, and terrorism. And one of the things I used to try to get my college students to do was to do ride along. Ride along with a police officer in any one of the shifts that they were on to see exactly what they do. To get a better idea of what takes place during a shift and what processes a police officer goes through. Be willing to take a closer look. We seem to be criticizing from the outside looking in, but try to take a peek in there. See what it's like.
Okay. Brothers, I really want to thank you. And it's something about that purple and gold that goes beyond the bounds of being more than we think what we are. And I commend each one of you. I thank you, and I thank all of those police officers, law enforcement people that risk their lives every day to bring some semblance to what a society of normalcy looks like. I know it's difficult, and Perry hit the nail right on the head when he said wounded warriors. That covers an array of things that you carry. And I want to say that we are discussing how the mental process of being one who uh, orders law or enforces law. In our next show on next week, we have some national renowned people who will be talking about the survival of being incarcerated. We have two guests who have served between the both of them over 60 years in prison. We have as a guest a national clemency person who was able to get one of them out. So we want to bring this full circle and understanding the human side of what it is to enforce the law, what it is to serve time for breaking the law and surviving in these institutions, and those who care enough to try to get people out of these situations. So we want to bring a well-rounded view of what it is. And yes, we want our young people to get involved with law enforcement. It's one of the awarding jobs. And yes, it takes a special person to do it correctly. And you all are special people. So I really want to thank you for this show, Anthony, Dexter, and James. I know each one of you personally, and I, like you, would lay my life down for you because you believe in laying your life down for us. And that means something, bro. So whatever it is that you can pass on to these young bucks, be them that are coming into the system, that want to be police officers, share with them what you went through and how you were able to maintain your sanity as a black man, as a father, and what you did to make this community, this world a better place. So, brothers, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I love you, and there ain't a damn thing you can do about it. Now, take that back. Shadrach, Meshach, and bad Negro.
Later.
Yo.
Oh, put them hooks down.